So the easiest way to track what a user types into an input field, much like this one here, or select from a drop-down box, is to use what's known as vModel. And vModel is just another view directive, and it allows us to sync a form field like this with some component data in a way that gives us something known as two-way data binding. And we're going to talk about what that means later on. But for now, let's take a look at how this works. So I'm going to head to the sign up form components, and I want to create a bit of data so that I can store in it what a user types in here. So first of all, we need our data function, which returns an object, and I'm going to create a property in this called email. And to begin with, that will be an empty string. Now, what I'd like is that when a user types in this input field, this gets updated with the value that they type in. So if they type in A, then this updates to keep track of that value with the value A, like so. So I want to kind of sync these two together. And as they type, it updates. So ABC, and it becomes ABC every time they type in a new key. So the best way to do this, and the easiest way to do this, is by using that directive vModel. And all I have to do is come to the input and say v-model, and set it equal to whatever data property that I want to use to track this input. So in our case, it's this, email. So let's say email. All right. Now you don't have to call this email. You can call it what you want. Just makes sense to me, since we're tracking an email, to call it email. Now let's do another one. I'm going to copy those two and change this to password. And then I'm going to change the type to password, and I'm going to change vModel to password. That means I have to create a password property over here. And to begin with, that will be a blank string. So as I type into this field now, then it's going to update this property so that we're tracking both of these different fields now. And we're storing those values. And then later on, when we go to submit the form, we have those values readily available in these data properties, which is nice. So let me now do something with these, because at the minute, although we're tracking them over here, nothing's happening. We're not doing anything with them. So let's now maybe output them at the bottom so we can see that we are tracking them. So underneath these two, I'm going to do a paragraph tag, and I will say, in fact, we'll do this outside of the form at the bottom. So we'll do a paragraph tag first and say the email, and that is going to be the email property that we have right here. And then we'll do the same thing for the password. So password is going to be password. All right, so let's give this a whirl. I'm going to save it and come over here, and you can see already, without typing it, they have already tracked what's currently in these different fields. Let me refresh. You can see that to begin with, they are empty strings. And if I type in like Mario, you can see updating at the bottom. And if I go to password, test 1, 2, 3, you can see that updating at the bottom as well. So we can see that we have these two properties tracking these two fields. And that was really simple. All we had to do was use the vModel directive and say what property we want to store this value in. Dead simple. So that's how this vModel directive works. But what does that term two-way data binding mean that I mentioned earlier? Well, it means that values are bound two ways between the template inputs here and the component data itself. So if the value updates from input by the user, we bind that update to the component data. So the component data updates, that would be one-way data binding from the input to the component data. But we also bind it the other way. So if I updated the value from our component inside a method or something like that, it would also update what we see inside the input field and anywhere else in the template that we output it, like down here as well. So we bind the data both ways. That's called two-way data binding, from the inputs to the data properties, and then from here to the template as well. And this is what vModel does for us behind the scenes. It binds the data in both directions. So let me just demo this. I'm going to start this off as Mario, and you'll see that we'll start off with Mario in the input field, and that's because it's bound from here to here, as well as from here to here. So we will be using vModel an awful lot as we go through the rest of the course, as we work with forms in numerous different projects.